You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame today to talk about some food, some amazing restaurant concepts, some names that you'll definitely notice a lot of the names that we'll talk about today, but the main name that owns all of those names, this restaurant group, is called the Hal Smith Group, and I have Mr. Kraft with me today, who has been a part of that business for a very long time. Michael, his son, has been on the podcast. I'll link that in the description. You can go listen to that. No doubt you guys have been to Neighborhood Jam. As you all know, if you're listening, a repeat listener, that's one of my favorite breakfast places, as well as Jimmy B's. So Hank Kraft on the podcast today. Excited to dive into the story and kind of how Hank, kind of intertwines with all of the Hal Smith Group stories. But thank you so much for coming down. Appreciate it. I know we obviously share the love of golf and local golf in the area. And I've both played Oklahoma City many, many times. But before we dive into kind of the restaurant stuff, tell us a little bit about kind of like, I guess, your background story, kind of where you grew up, where you went to school.
I grew up in Oklahoma City, where I was born. Went to high school at Northwest Classen and graduated in '65 from Northwest Classen and went to University of Oklahoma from there and went to the University of Oklahoma in '65 as a architect major and began school. But prior to that, this will kind of dovetail everything together. My senior year, I played in a all-star softball team, slow pitch, and on that team, on my team, was Hal Smith. And we had seen each other on the field, opposite, of course, but we played on the same team and got to know each other. It seems like we struck up a brotherhood that has lasted till today. And so anyway, when I went to OU, Hal was running the across the street restaurant down on Campus Corner. And he was kind of the figurehead down there. And so when I went in there and as a freshman, and we all go in there and order food, and Hal was working the counter, let him know I was there, and we stayed in touch during that time. Yeah. And I began school. The first 2 years was architect, being an architect major. And I had a fraternity brother Warren Tabor, who's very successful in Norman now as real estate, but he was working out at a restaurant called Red Coat Restaurant, which I don't know if many people remember that, but it was out on Lindsay and I-35. And he said, you need to come out here and work. If you need extra money, you get free food and you can eventually work your way to the counter. So I said, I need extra money. So I went out there and I enjoyed what I was doing. Obviously you start out as a busser and dishwasher, and then you work your way up. You learn broil, and you learn middle, and you learn to work the counter, and learn to run the cash register. And I fell in love with what was going on. And I'd been around cooking with my mom a little bit in the kitchen, and enjoyed that. But so started that, and after my sophomore year, going into my junior year, I really was excited about the food side of it. So I told my dad that I really wanted to switch out of architecture. He said, can you give it another year? So I did. I did 3.5 years of architecture school out of 5. And then I switched over to business management. He wasn't happy. And but I knew that's, when you get up every morning and you enjoy doing something, and I was looking forward, not necessarily going to architects classes, but going and working there. And so here's Hal working down across the street. He calls me one day and says, we're going to open up a steakhouse in Norman called Crust Timbers, and it was dinner only, and it was going to be patterned after Steak and Ale. And he said, "Would you like to come over here and cook and work with there was a gentleman that was cooking back there too, and Mitch Shamus, and he was in law school, very good cook, and I went over there to learn to cook on the grill, and obviously cook the menu that we were doing. Our menu was pretty much Steak and Ale's menu. Hal had hired all the waiters from Steak and Ale. I think we had probably borrowed some of the recipes as well, and so I started off back there, and eventually I was running the kitchen. I was still in school, switched over to business management, and it just seemed to continue to get better all the time. We expanded the bar. We had Mountain Smoke play right after we expanded our bar, which in that band was obviously Hal Clifford, who we had all gone to school with, but also I lost track of who was in that band, but he was the lead guitar player, and I'll think of that in just a minute.
It'll come back.
I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did that, and it was very successful. So the three owners that we had the across the street, had Cross Timbers, and they decided to build a Cross Timbers in Amarillo. And so Hal said, "I'll move to Amarillo with Sandy, and we'll do the thing out there." So they did that. I ended up running Cross Timbers in Norman. And at that time, just before Hal moved to Cross Timbers in Amarillo, Norman Brinker had come in he was playing polo with Bob Moore down in Norman. He came in one night, and he had dinner, and he said hello to Hal. I was in the kitchen, and he told Hal, he said, this concept's very similar to Steak and Ale. And of course, Norman Brinker founded Steak and Ale. And he said, "But you've done it quite well, and I'm very impressed." And he said, "Here's my card. If you ever need anything, holler at me." And of course, that's Norman, and a very gracious person. And so anyway, shorten the story a little bit. Hal, when moved to Amarillo, he got a call from Steak and Ale. He went to work for Steak and Ale, and obviously eventually became president of Steak and Ale, one of the youngest presidents that Steak and Ale's ever had. And so I was still there. I was overseeing the whole three restaurants, and I got a call, I think this was in 73, 74, from a gentleman that was going to start a concept in Oklahoma City called Molly Murphy's House of Fine Repute, and wanted to know if I wanted to be the GM of that. And so I said, "Sure." I said, "Show me the plans and let me look at it," because it wasn't built yet. So he said, "Well, the thing you've got to do is you're going to have to work with the architect and go find everything that goes inside of that, from the salad car to everything else." So, it fit kind of into what I was doing as having an architectural background. So I jumped over there. I left Campus Enterprises. I was the vice president there, and moved over to Molly Murphy's, and we built it and opened up and doing incredible business. It was for the Bob Tayar Enterprises, and he already had Bonaparte's. Bonaparte's was out on 39th Street, and then he had one over in Shepherd Mall at that time, and so we opened up Molly Murphy's. We were doing probably close to $4 million a year. At that time, that was pretty big, at 74. And I stayed with Bob 6 years. We opened up another Molly Murphy's in Tulsa, and we opened up Sweet Peas, and then we were in the process of developing a Mexican restaurant, Tamales, out on Northwest Highway. And when I got a call from Steak and Ale in 1980, and it was from Hal Smith, and he was president of Steak and Ale. And he said, "Hank, I need a director of new concepts for Steak and Ale." And he said, "I was thinking of you because I know you enjoy developing these concepts for people and putting them together, and but you need to come down and interview 2 people." And I said, "Okay, be glad to do it." And so talked to my wife, Michelle, and so I flew down there, and my first interview was with Norman Brinker. And I had not met Norman Brinker, but I went to lunch with him. By the time I got there for lunch with him, he rode with me, and I felt like I knew Norman extremely well. He was he could put you at ease real easy, and he's just the type of man that you can see why Steak and Ale was so successful. So we talked for about 2 hours over lunch, came back, and I took my car back to the airport, and I had another meeting with a named Chris Sullivan, if you'll remember. Just remember the name Chris Sullivan. Yeah. So I interviewed him at the airport with him. He had just flown in, and he was over the Bennigan's concept for Steak and Ale, and I interviewed him, and then I flew back on to Oklahoma City. Both interviews told Hal, let's hire him. Got hired. Michelle and I talked about it. We sold our house, moved to Dallas, and moved in '80. And probably one of the best times of my life. I needed to work for a large corporation. I'd always worked for small companies, and I needed to learn how large companies made money and how they did things from top to bottom. And so I did that. Got there, traveled. Most of my time looking for new concepts was with Norman Brinker. Pillsbury owned Steak and Ale at the time. Mm-hmm. And of course, Hal and Norman sat on the board with Pillsbury. And so a lot of times we would leave and go look at new concepts that Norman had in mind, or if I had in mind, and we did that from East Coast to West Coast. And got to know Norman extremely well, very intelligent, see the future 10 years out. He always knew what was going on in the industry. Yeah. He could always tell you, this is what we need to be doing, and so on and so forth. But he was trying to feed me information that I was trying to grow on as well. Right. And so we developed a new concept. Plus, they put me over. They had a Mexican restaurant called One and Only's, that one of a kind, cute name. It was losing about $500,000 a year. I took it over just to see what we could do with it. Norman said, if you can't turn it around, let's get rid of it. Yeah. We turned it around. We were making $500,000 a year, but we still got rid of it because it just didn't fit into the portfolio for Steak and Ale or Pillsbury, either one. Yeah. And then we also, I was put over to help with the Bennigan's concept, which was very successful, and it was a Fern Bar type concept that was kind of an answer to Fridays, which Steak and Ale wanted to do. And then we also developed another concept called JJ Muggs, which is similar to like a Chili's. And we started that down in Florida and spent a lot of time in Florida, opening up. Well, I think we ended up with about 7 down there, and when we came back and built more. Yeah. Actually built one in Oklahoma City, where the Charleston's is today, on Northwest Highway. Yeah. I was there until about 83. At the end of 83, I always wanted to do Charleston's. And I had gone before the board for Steak and Ale, and they kind of wanted to know what the future was for the concepts and I had suggested that Steak and Ale changed Steak and Ale's concept. It was too controlled environment. It needed windows. It needed to be more conducive to women and not be so masculine. And so the board said, we're not going to change. Norman said, hey, I'm right there with you. I think you're right on. And so I said, I'm going to leave, go back home and open a restaurant similar to a restaurant that had just opened in Dallas called Houston's. And I think everybody knows Houston's or Hillstone, either one. And so came back to Oklahoma City, couldn't find a place to put Charleston's in almost 84. And so for 2 years, almost 3 years, ended up doing a little burger concept called Kraft's drive-through burger grill, which is a double drive-through. We did one in Midwest City and one over by Putnam City High School, which we relocated by the high schools because our burgers were cheap. They were 95 cents, and it was a very limited menu. But Mike Rogers, who had followed me to Steak and Ale, who had been with Molly Murphy's, followed me there, and he had seen it, and I had seen this concept similar to that. So we opened that because we couldn't find anything to do full service yet.
Right.
And the location just didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, Hal called one day and said, we're going to close the J.J. Muggs down in Oklahoma City. Would you be interested in that building? And I said, absolutely. We'll gut it and remodel it. And so we did that and opened in 1987. And that's when the first Charleston's was at 35 years now that it's been out on Northwest Highway. And we opened it, and then we did a couple. Obviously, we went to Norman. We did a couple in Indianapolis, only because when Hal left Steak and Ale, he went to Chili's for a year as president and then went on to Chi-Chi's. And then he called me from Chi-Chi's and said they had 2 locations in Indianapolis that they were thinking about getting rid of, and I ought to look at them for Charleston. So I did that. We put that in, came back and did the Norman Charleston's down in Norman on Lloyd Noble Parkway. And time kind of just flew from 87 to 92, and then I got a call from Hal. Hal and I stayed in touch. He was doing his thing with Chi-Chi's, and I was doing my thing with Charleston's. And he called in 92 and said, I'm coming back home. Sandy and I are coming back to Norman, and why don't you be a partner with me? And we'll start Hal Smith Restaurant Group at that time. And so he came back, we did that, and then a name I mentioned to you earlier was Chris Sullivan. Mm-hmm. Well, Chris Sullivan had left Steak and Ale after Hal did, and he went and did the Chili's franchise in Florida for a while, and then he turned around and sold that back to Chili's, and he decided, he and Bob Basham, Bob Basham was with Bennigan's at the time too when I was there, came up with a concept that was a Australian concept, and it was called Outback Steakhouse. Chris called us and said, how many steaks do you want? He said, you guys, you build as many as you can in 3 years. 3.5, and I'm taking Outback public, and I'll buy y'all back, and at a multiple. So he did that. $42 million later, we'd sold everything back.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of our seed money to continue to grow in Hal Smith Restaurant Group. So, kind of the connections that we had that you just kind of run into, the phone calls kind of kept leading to me changing and people giving me opportunities. And that's a real key for me today is to, when Hal and I got together, we said, we're going to have fun, we're going to make money, and we're going to give people an opportunity to grow, which people gave both of us opportunity to just grow. And I think that's the key to attracting great people. Yeah. But just to throw a side note in there, Norman left the same time I did. He left Steak and Ale, which he had founded, because he had gone to Pillsbury twice. He and Hal had gone to Pillsbury and presented them with a concept that they thought should be added to the portfolio of Pillsbury. Pillsbury said no both times. That's when Norman got frustrated, because when I went in and told Norman I was leaving, he said, well, Hank, I'm leaving too, and I'm going to go buy. The concept was Chili's. They had 7 at the time, and he bought the concept, and of course he took it public, and everybody knows the history of Brinker today. But anyway, it was just what a great ride, and got to know a lot of people. But and then for Hal to come back and for us to be partners since 1992, 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's been a great ride, and today we have, I want to say, 82 restaurants and 6,000 employees and 13 concepts. So, and we're in 5 states. So pretty amazing.
That is amazing. There's so much in there to like. There's so many stories in those, like in just everything you've unpacked. I know we're not going to get to all of them today, but the first thing that came to mind from just you telling that story is cooking starts with your mum, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you grow up as a boy, you don't think I'm going to love cooking, right? You're outside, you're running around, you're playing sports, but then what was like? I'm interested in just kind of like that first moment where you're like, oh, I'm just going to help mum out with cooking. Like, what was that like? I didn't actually ever. I mean, my dad liked to cook too. He liked to cook on the rotisserie outside on the back porch. Yeah. He liked to do a lot of different meats and things, and we'd go quail hunting or pheasant hunting or duck hunting, and he'd always put it on the grill. But I would mainly watch, and I was just interested because I thought it was an interesting to take food and we either wrap bacon around it or put cheese in it or do whatever. And my mom was really good at those, and mom had great recipes. I watched her do everything. It's not like I just jumped in there and cooked, but I was interested in it, but I filed it away. It's not like I knew right then that's what I was going to do. Yeah. But I just filed it away because I thought it was interesting, just the science of food and watching how the recipes are all put together and so forth. So it's just that knack, and then of course cooking on Dad's grill a little bit. I watched him cook a lot, but and then being exposed to it when I get to college. All comes back around.
We go back around. All of a sudden now I'm doing the cooking, and whether it's the broil or the middle, the fry or whatever, and then now I'm working the counter, and it kind of all fell into place. But it was something that said, hey, this is fun. Yeah. This can be a passion. Mm-hmm. Not that I loved architecture, a lot of long labs, things like that, but this took a little bit more precedence over that.
Yeah. Why was it architecture why was that the choice?
I enjoyed all the design classes, or they were mechanical classes that we had in 7th and 8th grade, and also in some at Northwest class, and all of them, taking objects and making them 3D or doing whatever. I totally enjoyed that. I enjoyed math as well. Mm-hmm. So I just I liked the creative side of things, and architecture gave you that avenue to be creative. Yeah. And it's kind of a dare to dream, kind of deal, and I like to think outside the box. Yeah. And I've done that with if you think about all the concepts we have that I've influenced, I've done all the design work on the interior and lay them all out after Mike does all the kitchen designs, and form follows function, so he's got to get the function in there first, and then he turns it over to me, but then I lay out the inside and the exterior, and then we turn it over to an architect who's licensed to do all the drawings and things like that. But I can do the sketching and everything else, so it's all come into fruition to be to kind of work into everything that I've learned.
It's amazing how when you listen to your story and everything, when you look back on it, everything does come full circle, right? And there is a use for it somewhere, and now how you use that passion for architecture and like I said, form follows function, and then the way that people navigate through restaurants, and I mean it's all fascinating stuff. The flow and how servers have got to get through to their places, and how then you talked about having windows and lights and just having more of a female influence. Like there's so much that goes into it that we could sit here for 2 hours and just talk about how to set up a restaurant. There's so much in that. But the other thing that kind of stuck out to me is obviously you realize when you're in college that I want to go work in a restaurant. I don't think I want to go do architecture anymore. What was that first initial reaction? Was that like, I think I'm going to go on to own my own restaurants, or like where was the career thinking at that point?
At that point, I didn't think about ownership. I just thought about, learning of everybody I experienced or was around. What could I learn from them? And I was always asking a lot of questions. Why? Yeah. Why do we do this? Why do you do this? Not how you do it, but just why do you do it? And I just felt like there was a connection there of what they were telling me, and I sought out not only from Hal, but anybody, even the owners we had at across the street and Cross Timbers, talked to them. They were not in the restaurant. One of the three was in the restaurant business, and picked his mind as much as I could, and just asked a lot of questions. And I went to work for Bob Tayar. I asked him because he had been successful. And he had some good sides, and he'd had some bad sides. And I asked, why did you have the bad sides? And I wanted to know both ways, because you can learn from people's mistakes, and you can learn from your own mistakes, but at least make some mistakes. And I've done that, but it's not a but if you made a mistake, why did you make the mistake? And can you learn from it? Sure.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and like you said, you also, when you went to go work for a bigger corporation, right, to see how they work, that's obviously helped you tremendously in building, HSR for the last 30 years as well, and get to see everything. So, there's so much value in for people listening of, go out there and make mistakes, but also ask so many questions. Don't be scared to go work for someone for 10, 15, 20 years and then figure out, I can go do this on my own. You'll probably be more successful than if you were to just jump in saying, I can figure this out.
Yeah.
So.
But the large corporation like Steak and Ale helped me to understand demographics, helped me understand site selection, helped me understand the accounting side of how a big company does their accounting, how they do the reporting, how they had their own architectural division, which I totally enjoyed. I always went over there and visited a lot, but I got to know all the players over there, and then how operations handled people. And between Norman and Hal, which I think are identical in the ways they do things, how to handle people, how to work with people, and how to motivate people. And make them feel good, and make them feel worthwhile. And Norman was just he and Hal both, like I said, I think they have the same traits, and how to treat people, and how to hire people. Norman's comment to me was, one of the comments he made was, and Hal probably uses this a lot too, but I always remembered it, is that Norman said, always go out and hire stallions and put them on the track and let them run. And he said, you might have to jerk them back a little bit, but let them run. And, if you look around all of Steak and Ale, when I was there, I kept turning around, and, everybody was self-motivated. Everybody was, they wanted to make things happen. They wanted to treat their people right. And so that's kind of what we've done here, and Hal and I talked about that. And I just think, hiring the right people and then let them run. Let them do their thing. As long as I don't have to kick them in the rear and let them run on the track, that's fine. Because every now and then you're going to have to be jerked back, just like I was, here and there, and if they're smart, they feel that jerk, and they say, okay, great, but just let them keep going. And I always remember Norman telling me that too, and I know he told Hal that too, but that was a secret to his. He had such great people. If you look at all the people that left Steak and Ale that went on to run other companies, other restaurant companies, it's pretty amazing. And if you look at, really, we've had a lot of people leave our company that are running companies today, and we've had great success recruiting at OSU, because they have a demonstration room up there that we put our name on up there, and I think we gave them a considerable amount of money to do it on the new school up there. But it has helped us. I think we've got probably 20 at least graduates from the hotel and restaurant school in Stillwater, but and giving them an opportunity to kind of grow with us. So it's good to give back.
Oh, it's amazing. And there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of stories like that where you guys have given back over the years and during tough times. And, that, like I said, I'll link everybody to Hal's podcast as well, so everyone can kind of hear that story and how both of these stories will intertwine the whole way. Tell me about, obviously Chris goes on to build, Outback, right, and takes that off you, which gives you guys the money to start Hal Smith Group. Before we get into that story, have you been down to his place in Florida and played golf down there yet?
I have not been there. I think
Okay.
Hal's been there maybe,
Yeah.
but I have not. Chris was up here about 6 months ago. He was flying through and stopped by and talked to Hal. And I was actually out of town and didn't get to see him. But I miss seeing Chris. We used to play we played on the Steak and Ale softball team together, and Hal played on that team, and we were pretty good there in Dallas. But I miss seeing Chris because we all did things together as families on Friday and Saturday night. Friday night was with the kids, Saturday night was without the kids, and we had a great time.
Yeah.
So
to that point, how important do you think it is for employees of any kind to get into a competitive but kind of a fun competitive scene, like playing, softball, whatever it is? Like, there's so many leagues out there that people play in. That must be so good for business camaraderie and just kind of.
Well, I think it is. I think a lot of our restaurants are playing in soccer leagues, kickball leagues, some softball leagues, some are co-ed, and but I think it's all good. I think it was fun back then because it was a lot of the guys that were in executive positions, but yet it was some of the GMs that obviously went out and we recruited them because they were good players and a little younger than us, but they were good. And it was a fun softball league to play against other teams like Fridays and on the border and things like that. I just think it's very healthy to do it.
Yeah, I think more people should definitely do it, right? Not just for physical benefits.
The gentleman that played in that band was Vince Gill.
Oh yeah, kind of a big deal.
Yeah, he played with
Oklahoma Hall of Fame,
Mountain Smoke.
That's amazing.
And they were one of the first bands that played in our little bar there at Cross Timbers. And I always remember seeing Vince up there. And of course, at that time he didn't have a name, but we can, and of course he was. When Hal was inducted to the Hall of Fame, he was there and so forth. But it was kind of interesting because he was a music major. Right. He loved music at Northwest Classen. So at the time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So obviously you get you kind of get this money from Chris from taking Outback, and you think, right, we're off to the races now. We have a start. What was that first conversation with you and Hal of kind of, we're just going to build? Was it, we're just going to open multiple concepts, or we're just going to slowly focus on one and slowly grow that way?
Well, we had Cross Timbers, and the focus at that time was just Charleston's. And we already had 4 and 5, and then we kind of put it on hold to do the Outback thing. And, we were gung-ho 19 in 3 years. And then we came back and said, Cross Timber, I keep thinking of Cross Timbers, but Charleston's was a viable concept. It was doing well, and as we opened them, they showed great signs of success. But Hal and I just kept kicking around new ideas, and then we opened up Red Rock out on the lake. I think Barry Switzer had opened his first restaurant up there, and we were going to build right next to him. And Randy Hogan came to us and said, "Can you all have something you want to put here?" And Hal says, "What do you think?" And I said, "We already had a Charleston's on Northwest Highway," which we felt like was too close. So came up with the idea of a Red Rock dinner only. It's kind of a Southwest theme, and play to the lake, which it does. And it opened extremely successful, and of course we've gone on to build 5 more of those. But it was a challenge, but it was fun, new concept. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then we had built a Charleston's in Yale and Tulsa, and we'd also put a little burger boomerang right next to it, which Tulsa didn't take to the boomerang too well. So Hal and I looked at each other one day, and Hal said, I've always had a name that I've wanted to use. And he said, "What do you think about doing a steakhouse?" And I said, "I'd love it." He said, "How about mahogany?" He said, "I always loved the rich wood, and it stands for something really good." So we put together that little mahogany there, and of course we've got 4 of those today, and they do quite well too. So it kind of started leading us to doing Still doing Charleston's, but just expanding and growing and doing kind of what I love is developing new concepts and coming up with ideas and seeing what's out in the market. What are people going to be interested in? And it's kind of that vision that Norman Brinker had. Hal had a good vision and led us down that path of, hey, let's go look at this, let's go look at that. And all of a sudden you see things out there. We saw something like an upper crust down in Dallas one day, and then I saw something out in Napa Valley that was like an upper crust, so we married the two, and we came up with the upper crust, and of course I think Hal and the coach, Bob Stoops came up with Louie's, because that was from Manhattan, Kansas. Bob had seen that, and next thing you know, we've got Louie's going, and then...
Is that named after his dog?
It might be. I think it was, yeah. And then they used to play Louie Louie at the end of the night too, but I don't know if that still goes on or not. And then the garage came along because of Brandon Kistler and Tanner Smith. They kind of came up with, let's do it, and I think Hal always had in the back of his mind like a Chili's concept, but do it a little differently. And obviously that's been so successful to do that. And then along comes, we did some onesies like Hefner Grill. We had to take that over and kind of convert it 3 or 4 times, but I think it's got a lot of traction right now as Hefner Grill. Then we took the old Darden concept over and put Mama's in there, and it's been very successful. And you look at all the other concepts, well, we got 13 now. So, and I think they all are doing well, and I think some have definite legs to grow.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just for people listening, to give you context, I'll name all 13. You've got Charleston's, El Huevo, which is pretty new, right?
Very new.
The Garage. Notice for people listening, I said that in an American way, not garage, like I would have said. Hefner Grill, Holly's, Louie's, Mahogany, Mama Roja, Neighborhood Jam, Pub W, Red Rock Canyon Grill, Toby Keith's, and Upper Crust, and then the Winston and Jimmy B's.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, you obviously know those names. Being in the concept development part of the business, that's got to be the most exciting part of the business, right? You get to hang around, you get to travel, you get to sample stuff. I mean, there's nothing better than traveling to a different state or a different part of town and just thinking, you know what, we're just going to go out and sample and see what's hot on the market right now.
That's what's the exciting things. We try to put together trips that we go to Dallas, or we go to Kansas City, or we go to Nashville, or we go to may go out to the West Coast every now and then, a little bit of East Coast, but really the trends kind of start in California, in my opinion, and they get back here about 2 years later. But we've been able to look at these trends. Dallas being so close, 3.5 hours away, we pick up a lot of things there. I mean, there's a lot of concepts that come and go in Dallas. A lot of new chefs come to town and leave and so forth that are chef-driven concepts. But we've been very blessed to be able to identify and put new concepts on paper and bring them to fruition. We've got an incredible R&D staff, and led by Brad Johnson, who's been our chef for 22 years now, and graduate of CIA school in New York. But the creativity continues, and we all try to think outside the 4 walls.
Yeah, it's amazing to see. Reset that real quick. It's amazing to kind of, there's so many restaurants, right, that just were on the drawing board and they just didn't happen, or they got shelved for a little bit and you probably brought them back in, and there's ones that you still want to do but the market's not right yet. That's the beauty of it, and it's because the beauty and the curse of it is because you have so much choice. It just comes down to the numbers in the market that we're in Oklahoma City. And I think over the last 10 years, I've been here 11 years now, and over the last 10 years, it seems that the food scene in Oklahoma City is just kind of blossomed for
it has,
right? And people are willing to try more food, or they've traveled a little bit more, so they just, it's not just like you said, your steakhouses and your meat and potatoes, and there's some really cool food here.
I think Oklahoma's been a well-kept secret. For just exposing people to new things, and as well as the labor market and just the cost of living here has been a well-kept secret, but I think it's out now,
Yeah.
more so than anything. But luckily, we're in locations. Obviously, we have one in Mesa, Arizona, and two in Indianapolis. But other than that, we're from Fort Worth all the way up to Omaha,
Yeah.
and and do quite well. We're in Arkansas too, but Kansas has been good to us, and Missouri. We have Charleston's on the Missouri state line, but it's been a good market.
Yeah.
And as well as Tulsa and Oklahoma City.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, obviously, when kind of, Michael, your son, came probably to you around high school, I would assume, and said, I'm going to go to college and this is where I'm going to go. And I'm kind of going to go into the restaurant management industry, school down at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been really cool for you to
Well,
have
that's
right?
a neat story in itself, and I'm so proud of Michael. And, at the end of his sophomore year at University of Mississippi, he called and said, Dad, I think you and Hal need to come down here because this is a real breakfast town, and there's a lot of concepts here. Bed Bag Breakfast is one of them, but he says you need to come down here and I'll show you around. So we flew down there, and he picked us up at the airport, and he handed us a business plan.
Yeah.
And said this is our itinerary for the day, which really entailed almost till 7 o'clock, and we got there about 8 o'clock. And so we went to all these different places, eating a little bit here, a little bit there, and he explained everything to us. And at that time, University of Mississippi did not have a hotel and restaurant school. They just changed over after his sophomore year. So he decided, this is what I want to do. So he switched over.
Yeah.
A lot of his credits transferred, and then Hal and I, at the end of the day, on the way home on the plane, we talked about that, and I called Michael back, and I said, Michael, there's two things you need to do. First of all, you need to graduate, which you have 2 years left, and then you need to come work for us for 2 years. And he said, that's a deal. So he did both. We already had the menu in hand, pretty much of what Jam is today. We didn't have a name, but we had the menu and everything. So when he came back, he graduated, came back, spent 2 years at the different Charlestons, Red Rock. We opened up the first Jam, 150th and Penn. Great success, mainly because of Michael. He knew how to reach social media. The people were lined out the door before we even opened, but there was a lot of good social media mix going on, and we have 5 today, and two are in the books to be done in Yukon and on South May 104th, and I think we could do one more in Tulsa, and then we'll go out of state with it. So, but I think and Jimmy B's was Michael's idea too. He wanted to do a Kraft bar like that, not to play on words, but we spelled it with a K.
Yeah.
But he wanted to do a Kraft bar, but put a lot of really good food with it.
Yeah.
Limited menu, but we needed a small location, something that would be in the right demographic, and that's turned out really well. So really, Michael's had those two concepts, and Hal and I couldn't be more proud of him, and he brings a lot of ideas to the table, more than I could even bring to the table. But he's always thinking. He's outside the box, way outside the box. So
back to your point of what Norm said was hiring stallions, right, and just kind of pointing them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Saying, oh, don't go that way, go this way a little bit, and you got full support of us. Just bring ideas, and we'll tell you which ones are good and tell you which ones are bad. But there's nothing better than employing people who are fresh, young, have new ideas, right, and also probably come into the business with a little bit of knowledge, but not as much as they're not kind of painted with the same brush of like, this is how we've done it for 30 years, right? Which is really fun.
Well, you want them to come into the business as a sponge.
Yeah.
And if they tell you that in an interview, I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
And you can see it is a passion or it's not. But I mean, you look at the how long a lot of people have been with us. It's pretty incredible. All of our area partners. all the way down to our chef that's been 22 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it speaks well for what we do, and we don't hardly lose people. I think we probably lose people because we let them go more so than people leave us. But if they leave us, a lot of times they leave us because they're going to go do their own thing. And if they're successful, that's fine. That's just a feather in our hat because they've been successful. But we do look for people that are sponges. And, if they come from the outside in, we're trying to recruit 70 to 80% from within because we already know their work ethic. They know what we're about. We know what they're about. And that's our goal is to continue to have a huge what I call the ROR, the return on retention, and we're working on retention. That's kind of our goal this year, coming out of COVID and everything else. Obviously, I think everybody lost a lot of employees. We didn't lose any managers because of it, but it's just we've got to find a way to help lifestyle in the restaurants and increase retention in the restaurants and hourlies as well as management, and be very sensitive to that. Otherwise, we're going to fall to the wayside, because you got to have people.
Right.
You got to have people front line taking care of the guests, and we need people running the restaurants too. And but we've seemed to, knock on wood, attracted great people, and that's why Hal and I and David and Mike are where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously there's no secret the business has been around, like you said, for 30 years now, and like, still moving forward, still growing, and still with the future plan to continue to grow, right? I mean, I'm sure over the years you had many offers from bigger companies to sell out or go public or whatever it is, but from what I spoke to Michael and spoke to Hal, is take a lot of pride in being locally owned and being, a huge part of the community, and you're not just here to sell food. Yeah,
that is correct. Well, I mean, we've had offers, but not the right thing.
Yeah.
And we enjoy being private. You don't wake up in the morning and people don't know what you're doing. If you're public, and I've been there, done that, not as much as Hal, but it's nice. And we can run it, but we're running it right. I mean, if somebody did come along and buy us, it would be pretty incredible because they're getting a company that's run almost like the big companies, but we do all the things right. We're constantly plussing, making things better. Our training, we borrowed that from Steak and Ale. And when I left there and came back here, we borrowed the training manuals, and we've just taken, because they had the best management and employee training at the time, and all we've done is plus it over the years. And now Sarah McDaniel is over the training department, and it's incredible. I mean, I think that's our training is top notch from top to bottom, but we're always changing it. I mean, I send her to Disney and to go to their training programs because they do such a great job. And she's been there, done that, come back, brought new ideas, and that's what I'm looking for is new ideas.
Yeah, that's worth paying for, right? You don't pay people just to serve, pay people to bring new ideas and how do we evolve? Because it seems, especially nowadays, businesses are evolving a lot quicker now compared to what they were in the 90s and the 80s, whereas so you have to stay on your toes, right? And the people move a lot faster. And the probably things that slow you down is getting in a building and outfitting it, getting it ready, and then once it's ready, let's get this thing going.
Construction is kind of probably the slowest part of it. We can get the drawings done and so forth, but it definitely slows us down a little bit, but we're usually ready to go. When we create a new concept, there's enough people raise their hands from other concepts to say, I want to be on the training team to help develop that. And that's the fun time to me, is developing a new concept and getting it on paper, getting it built and getting it open. And then you have a new culture that's created, and you've taken people in 2 weeks' time and transformed them into Jimmy B's or a Jam or whatever it might be. But that's the fun part of it to me. And then, and see it develop and see whoever oversees it takes that culture and then we grow it.
Yeah. Over the last 30 years then with being partners with Hal, what's been some of the best moments and then some of the moments where have really kind of defined the business?
I think the best moments are just seeing people get trained properly and people making money in these stores, and people have an opportunity to grow whatever they might be, whether it's management side or employee side. We've had our opportunities. We've had some concepts we've closed down, reopened. We've had some that we've just closed down. But, those you just have to admit, either you pick the wrong side or you're doing the wrong thing or doing whatever and move on. And we did that at Steak and Ale, and, disappointments. I think we've learned from everything. I wouldn't say we've had any huge disappointments at all. They've just been learning experiences. I think there are opportunities out there. I think you have to look at them as opportunities all the time, not disappointments and not failures, but you learn from it. And we've lost a few people. The biggest disappointment is probably losing some people to a car wreck or a motorcycle wreck or whatever it might be. We had Jim Blanchard, who's with us 22 years, and he was with us in the Outback days too. And it was just tragic to lose an area partner like that. Just
that who Jimmy B's represents?
Yeah. That's who Jimmy B's is named after, is Jim Blanchard.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because you build such a great relationship with all these people. You invest in your employees, not just training, but their lives in general. This isn't just come work for us and you can make some money. This is a family, and I got that sense from Michael. I get it from you. I got it from Hal. I got it from Kirsten Holder, who I know her husband Andrew told me the same thing. Multiple people who've either been on the podcast or have worked with you guys that have said the same thing. It's very hard to leave, because it's such a big family. And that's kind of the way that you guys have built it intentionally, and you can definitely see that. And not only from management, but you can see it from the smiling faces who serve you every day, right? People love coming to work.
And I think they do. I think when we hire people, you look for that passion, and if they don't have that passion, they eventually weed themselves out, or we do. But we are a big family, and Steak and Ale was a big family. And but I think if you hire the right people, that culture stays there. I think people keep generating that feel, and you feel like, gosh, I'm part of something, and I don't want to leave, but if I do leave, I've gained the knowledge that I needed to gain to do, just kind of like my story going to Steak and Ale. And that couldn't have been a better opportunity. But Hal gave me that opportunity to jump from small to large, and then back to small, and now back to, I wouldn't call us large. I'd just call us, something where we can manage. And have fun doing it and make money, and just give people an opportunity.
Yeah. So finishing up then, you recently turned 75. And you had, you took over the company in January. A lot of people at your age would just think, I'm just going to put my feet up and play golf every day. What keeps you going?
I think just my DNA. My dad was German, and the work ethic he had, worked 7 days a week. I think, just that DNA. I don't like to sit still. I keep moving all the time, and a lot of people said, well, you're 75, you need to slow down, and I've never, since I got in the restaurant business, never had a day where I got out of bed and said, I'm not looking forward to work. And I feel sorry for people that don't have that passion for what they do, and my advice to them is go find something you have a passion to do, and you'll have fun every day getting up and doing what you do, because I enjoy it. I enjoy the people. The people keep me inspired, to keep me young, and people like Michael and all the younger people that run all of our restaurants today, they just keep me inspired too. and then being around all the young generation that's waiting tables and doing so forth. It's just it's a passion I found at the end of my sophomore year in college, and never looked back. I have no regrets, whatsoever. Everything's kind of fallen into place.
Yeah. What are you excited about then for the rest of the year, moving into the future? I know, obviously, back to what Norm said, you're always kind of looking ahead, and one of his greatest attributes was the fact that he had a vision for the future and what's coming. What to bring it kind of, to today's context?
I'm looking forward to, obviously this year, we have 5 concepts or 5 stores on the books. 2 are remodels up in Omaha that we're moving locations, but besides the 5. But I'm looking for all of that. I'm looking for the growth, and growth is the oxygen for our people to grow. And if we have growth, then they grow, and it gives everybody an opportunity to be a GM in 5 stores. And that's what I look forward to is continue to give people an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, that's great. And I think that's the more oxygen we can provide and do that. I think we're structured well. Our infrastructure is incredible, from Hal to David to Mike. And I think we can handle the growth.
Yeah, and is the plan to kind of keep growing with the concepts that are working, or just over time add in? Are you looking at new concepts right now? Like, where is that?
We've been throwing some bones as far as new concepts. I'm looking at those, but right now we just want to grow. We think not all of our concepts have legs, but I think at least 5 or 6 do. And we're going to continue to try to find sites for those and grow them. We're going to be very conservative. We're looking for quality rather than quantity. And if we can continue to do that, since we're privately owned, we just have to kind of watch how we do things.
Yeah.
Because we don't need failures. Right. So.
Well, finishing up, I just want to say thank you so much for coming down. It's amazing listening to your story and how everything kind of weaves together, and it all stems back to you playing slow pitch softball with Hal. There's so many people out there that are listening that, great relationships are right in front of them. They're probably in their contact phone. It's probably someone you've sent an Instagram message to in the last, week. And so key point for people listening is, take full advantage of the relationships that are around you and the people that are around you, because you never know, right? You never know. You might get that phone call and, hey, come work with me, or I have a cool idea, come do this. And how this is navigated from college, in the 60s to where we are now, and all of the amazing relationships you've had and the stories you have, and the guys who you're friends with, and just, it's amazing to kind of weave through it all. And I know there's so many things we didn't get to, but we've told a lot of stories here today, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And anytime you want to hear more stories, who got them, or Hal, or you might have both of us in the same room at the same time.
I keep telling Michael to start a Hal Smith podcast, because there's so many employee stories there that can be shared, and not just yours and Hal's, but even the stories that just that aren't related to the restaurant industry. You guys have been great friends for so long.
We're like brothers, together. And it's pretty incredible. Even Mike Rogers, who came to me, graduated from hotel and restaurant school, and at OSU, and he walked into Molly Murphy's in Tulsa, and he was just walking around and said, I'm looking for a job. And he's been with me ever since. And he's like a brother too. It's just amazing how the personalities have really worked over the years. You don't see that real often in businesses that stay together like that. But they've all played an important part in what we do today, and hats off to all of them.
It's come together very naturally. You haven't seemed to be going out there saying, we need to find a person like this.
Yeah.
That person's just kind of come to you over time, which is another great
Because we all wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So in a small company. But we have great people. That's what makes it fun every day and gives us opportunity every now and then to play golf.
Yeah.
And do those things.
Hopefully play a lot more of it as well.
Yes.
You're probably more busy now taking over the reins than you were, but hopefully you can sneak away and play some golf. Yeah, and travel to some of your places, some of your restaurants, and do some more research, if we call it research, right?
R&D.
R&D, yeah. But Hank, thank you so much. For people listening, I'll put the link to the restaurant website. You guys can go check that out. If you guys are listening, have a family member that wants a job, is looking for jobs, I'm sure there's plenty of contact information in the website you can go check out. And also, if you're hungry, if you hadn't tried these restaurants, go to breakfast at Neighborhood Jam, please, if you haven't been, because it's fantastic. I get the same thing every time. It's the oatmeal. The overnight oats I get every single time, cold, and that's my go-to. So, for people listening, thank you so much, and we will catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.